Welcome to the Top Builder Solutions Getting Started Workshop, Level 1. In this training session, we're going to take a look at the CRM portion of Top Builder Solutions. We'll dive into a lead and see what makes it a successful one. And then we'll have some best practices on all the different portions of CRM and what each one does. Now, before we get started inside of Top Builder Solutions, it's important to see this very first slide, which is how our training and support works. This is how we make sure you get your answers quickly and efficiently. We want you to be successful with the system. It's the only way we're successful. So option one is always your help center. This is a tool that is available to you as a user right inside of Top Builder Solutions, which means it can be accessed pretty much any time, 24 hours a day. It is right here in the nav bar. You'll see I just popped up my dashboard. If I click the Help Center, it always comes up in a separate window, so I can still work in Top Builder and browse the help area. There's a lot of different topics here, some of them very broad, like creating and monitoring email campaigns. Some of them very targeted, like resizing an image. If I need to put a flyer inside of a piece of email marketing and make sure it looks good on the other side, I want to make sure that I've resized it properly for the template that it's in. So these are very handy. These are nice and you can access them anytime, and there's good information here. Some of these have videos and some have guides. We're always adding to this as well, so this is a growing tool for you. Now, of course, option two is always our daily trainings. We train 5 days a week. Level 1, which is pretty much what this is, happens 3 days a week. It's always kind of a pre-canned high-level flavor of Top Builder Solutions, but we do offer an intermediate Level 2 training, which is unique. It's an open Q&A session where we can dive into any of the more advanced topics of Top Builder Solutions. And of course, we do those twice a week. And we can go through anything that might be a little more in-depth or that would take longer. So it's definitely a more specialized training, and it's more targeted at people who have already started using the system and might have questions they've encountered through that use. Now, of course, we always have direct contact. Option 3 is to email or call support. Support at topbuildersolutions.com is your best resource. It goes directly to me, and of course, it's also checked by our support team. We have a toll-free number, which you could leave support requests for, and those are forwarded to our team, or you're always welcome to call me, the support manager here at Top Builder Solutions, Don, anytime on my mobile number. So that is always available for you as well. And of course, Dave is always available for you should you have technical questions, coding questions, or something within the software engineering field. So that is always available for you. We want to make sure that you always get the help you need. So please reach out to us if you need us. We'll go ahead. We're going to jump over now into Top Builder Solutions. I'll close down the Help Center. Of course, that's always available should I need it. We see my dashboard here. This is the first thing we always see when we log in. Now, there's one piece of setup that I need to do as a new user. The very first time I log into Top Builder Solutions, the little piece of housekeeping I need to do is my profile, and that's located right up here in the setup, here, under the My Profile. We're going to achieve 3 things here. First, we're going to set up our alerts. So Top Builder Solutions has many ways to tell us that work needs to be done. And of course, there's even things like birthday and anniversary alerts. And of course, alerts to let us know that our newsletter is due or has been sent. So we can come in here and we can set our preferences for email, or we can set a calendar appointment right inside of Top Builder Solutions. Or if you always have your phone with you, and it's handier to have it that way, of course, we can have it text us. So if I have a past due reminder, I can have it text directly to my phone. I achieve that by putting my cell phone number here and selecting the carrier that I'm with, and that allows us to text message you those alerts. The second thing I'll achieve here is I'm going to change my password. As a Top Builder user, it is important to know that everybody has the same password when they start. So we'll want to go ahead and change that to something that makes sense to us and that's something we can remember. And of course, we have no minimum, so you can make that whatever you like. The third thing, but the most important thing we'll achieve here in the profile, is to set up our email signature. And this is the same signature that you might have outside of Top Builder in Outlook or Google or Yahoo. If we look here, you'll see I've created my email signature from what I have in my Outlook. I've just taken it and I've copied it and I've pasted it directly into Top Builder Solutions. I could also paste it in as HTML, or I could build it by hand. I can build it from scratch. I can put in links. I can put in photos, like my logo here. And of course, I might need even to resize that logo if it's a little large. But I'm going to make sure that I get this in here, and I'm going to make sure that I save it. And that's important because that's the first step in email integration, and that's a very cool feature of Top Builder Solutions I'll show you when we get into the history section of a lead. But just know that Top Builder Solutions has a way to work in the background for us and save the conversations we have with our customers over email. It's very cool. So now that we've set up our profile, of course, we'll save it, and then we'll go back to our dashboard. That's done. We don't have to do that again. Now, what I look at when I see my dashboard here, this is all, of course, lead-centered. CRM is a customer relations management system. This is lead management and contact management. But more importantly, we're using this to make money. This is a return on our investment. So the very first thing we see when we look at the screen, of course, is always our leads. These are our active leads. What we're trying to do to make money. And of course, we'll see here, just at a glance, I have a short description that gives me a who and a what. And then I have some statuses, some priorities and types, just to kind of let me know what this is. And then I also have a quick, at a glance, just with a quick click, a history of everything I've done with the customer and the next steps. Now that's important. That tells me exactly where I've been and where I'm going with every customer. I also have all of my tasks here, which I'm using to work these leads. I have my analytics, but right on top of the analytics, maybe the most important thing we see on the dashboard is this little guy here. This box actually tells us if we have any leads that are basically not making us money. So I see that I have two little options here that are over 0. So if this number is over 0, I have work to do. I have a lead without next steps assigned. What that basically means is I have a lead that if I don't remember to pull it up, if I don't remember to check on it or make a call, chances are it's going to fall off the main screen or get buried, and I'm going to leave that money on the table. So I want to make sure I always have next steps, tasks associated with closing out that particular lead. Now then, I also see I have 20 past due tasks. So whether or not I've got leads with next steps, it doesn't matter if I do or not if I'm not doing the tasks. Either way, I'm leaving money on the table. So I want to make sure that these numbers are always 0. And keep in mind, if I'm asking myself which one of these leads doesn't have a next step, I can always click, and it will take me directly to the one that I have. So we see here now we're in our lead management screen that gives us some options on what I can do with this lead. Well, I'm going to head back to my dashboard. Let's take a look at those leads again. I'm going to pull up the CRM portion here. Since this is what we're going to focus on, we see that there's 4 components to CRM. Let's separate these and sort of throw some definitions out on what we mean for each one of these. Now, leads and contacts are very similar, but we want to make sure we separate these. In the leads will be your, of course, opportunities to sell, to make money, and the contacts will be your professionals. So anytime we think of a contact in Top Builder Solutions, or we're clicking New Contact, chances are, a good portion of the time, we're putting in someone we work with, but not necessarily that we're trying to sell to. So these are the professionals we work with, whether they be our real estate agents, our subcontractors, consultants, anyone. So those are the differences between our leads and our contacts, of course. A lead will always have a customer associated with it, and I'll show you what I mean by that when we dive into a lead. We have tasks. And of course, tasks, as I mentioned, are just a way to keep us on track, to make sure that we're working our leads to the fullest. And then the 4th component, this is a very simple but powerful component. This is the accounts. And what an account is in Top Builder Solutions is just a way to group contacts together. So a good example would be I work with Keller Williams Realty. I have 30 agents that I work with there. Well, I would create a Keller Williams account and I would group those 30 professional contacts under that account. It makes them easier to find later on, and if I have a piece of inventory I want to send out to try to sell, and I want to get it directly to Keller Williams, well, it makes it super easy to get it to those 30 people. So I can get it in a lot of hands at once, and I can also use this as sort of almost like a mailing list, right? I could put several contacts onto an account to make it easy to find them later. It is important to note, I can only have one contact on one account. If I move it to another account, it kind of kicks it off the last one. So that is an important thing to remember. Let's take a look at a lead specifically. We're going to get into the details of what a lead is and what makes a successful one in the system. We're going to click New Lead here because it'll bring up the interface to put in a new lead by hand. But keep in mind, we can pull in leads many different ways. You might have a contact us form on your website where a customer puts in some information, and that could automatically populate a lead within Top Builder Solutions, complete, even with a follow-up plan on it. So it takes away a lot of the legwork on your side. If you have an interface with BDX, New Home Source, we can also pull those leads in automatically. So keep in mind that those are options to take away some of that legwork, some of that extra work that might be involved. Now, we're always going to have to put some leads in by hand. That's true. Every once in a while, there'll be one that we have to enter. So let's take a look at each component of a lead and what makes it successful. Earlier, we looked at that short description. And I said a good short description gives us the who and the what. Of course, we want it to give us that because on that main screen, that is really what clues us into what that particular lead is. Just very quickly, I want you to look at my main screen again. I have several here. And I've even named them with different conventions. Full names, last names, companies, what we're doing, or where we're doing it. Keep in mind that you can standardize this in your office. Make sure this makes sense to you and makes sense to your business, but also give yourself a who and a what so that at a glance I know I'm working for Mr. Bond at 007 Grogan's Mill, or that I'm doing some work for Mr. White at Major Industries. Something like this, web lead, really tells me very little. It's too vague. I don't know a who and a what. I know kind of some of the details here, and I can see some histories and next steps. And the history may even clue me into who this is, but it is important to make sure that we're a little more verbose with our short descriptions. We want something more than just web lead or, some sort of test lead. We want to make sure that there is a lot of information in here, something to give us a who and a what. So let me pull back up that new lead, and let's put something in here to make sure that we know who we're working for, which is Mr. Smith. And in this case, we're actually going to be working at a particular address, Holly Hall Lane. Now, of course, the lead type is going to tell us exactly what it is we're doing. This is a list that makes sense to your business. When I open this up, you see a lot of options here. But of course, if all you do is remodeling, then maybe you only have a few options here for the type of remodeling jobs that you do. This is a list that we can change, customize, and fully build to the way that your company does business. And anytime you see this little thing here at the top when you do a drop-down, edit list, basically means that I can change that drop-down. And I can do a lot of things here. You'll see that I can delete the ones that aren't in use. If it's grayed out, it is in use somewhere in the system. It's being hooked somewhere. So I need to go change it or take it out before I can delete it. Now I can also edit the wording. I can completely change this to match the Office lexicon that I use. I can change the display order that I see it, or I can add brand new ones that aren't represented. So I can make this list my own. And this is true of a lot of lists within Top Builder, and you're going to notice as we go through this that Top Builder is a very customizable and malleable CRM system, potentially one of the most out there. So it gives you a lot of options on making the system do business the way that you do business. So what we're going to do here is select a lead type that is appropriate for what we're trying to do here. We know we're working at a 1010 Holly Hall Lane. In this case, let's just say we're going to be building a custom home on that particular location. Now, description is the next field, and it is a totally open field for you. You can put anything you like here. You don't have to frame it in any specific way. The only thing I will tell you about description fields is in Top Builder, a description field is always highly visible. You'll hear me say that several times, and I'll show you what I mean as I go through. But anything I type in a description field on several of the management screens and in some of the quick view screens, the description is one of the main things that I look at. So just know that this is a very visible field. I also have an option here for communities. So if I use communities within my company, it may mean that I have separate salespeople assigned to separate regions or areas. Now, if that's the case, chances are if this customer is only interested in Anglers Cove and Briar Grove, I don't want the other agents from other areas seeing this particular lead. So what I've done here is I've set a security level. By clicking these two, I've secured it only to certain people, and of course to the guy it's assigned to. Now I can undo the entire thing just by clicking share this lead, and now everyone who has access to this account has access to this particular lead. They can do tasks on it, they can see it if they check off the show only my leads on the main screen. So this is always default off. It is not a default option. You have to opt to share your leads. The next two things you see here are status and priority. Now these are important. Not only do they represent the sales process, but they're also switches that help us automate Top Builder solutions for you. When we see those tasks that I had past due, keep in mind I didn't go in and type those in by hand. I didn't do that legwork. I had a follow-up plan that automatically gives me a set of steps to get through a certain step of my sales process. Now that's what this would represent. When I look at my status in this drop-down here, I'm looking at my sales process. If I go through and map my sales process and I have 15 steps in it, I should have 15 steps here. This should map, this should match it exactly. So if I don't call my online inquiries, if I call them suspects or qualifying, I would have that exact verbiage in here. And this is a list I can change, of course. So this will match my sales process, and we can use this to switch the steps involved in a task to solving our tasks. Now, of course, priority. This always means the same thing, and basically what it means is how ready are they to purchase. So a priority can be worded many different ways. You'll see we have really hot or warm or super hot or A or B. Maybe it's good or bad, whatever you call it. We can edit this list and make sure it makes sense to you and makes sense to the way that you do business. But always make sure that this is how ready they are to purchase. Let's go ahead and say that he's an A, 0 to 3 months. He's ready to go. Now, the source, of course, is the last thing I select. This is where this came from. I'm going to say that a realtor or an agent sent me this piece of business. Now, of course, he could have come from a website or BDX or any number of sources. But a realtor sent me this particular one, and I'll show you why for the sake of argument. We're going to use that. Now, we're going to create our customer contact. We know we're working with Mr. Smith, and in this case, it's Mr. Jim Smith. We're going to make sure we capture phone numbers, email addresses, and you'll notice by default, he is opted in to the newsletter. So there's no reason to take him off unless he's told you not to. So we also have our follow-up plan here. This is the default follow-up plan that we've selected in the system, which means this is the one that always applies if I don't tell it to do something different. Once I have all of this entered, I could potentially hit save and close, and this is a lead I could work. It doesn't necessarily mean that I've put all of the work into this lead, though. There is always an enter more info button, and we always do say hit that anytime we give you that option, because you'll see what happens when I hit that button. Now I have a whole slew of new options. I have contract options. I have total expected revenues. I can even enter more information about Mr. Jim Smith here. His information about where he lives, his wife, his children, where he works. Here's that birthday and anniversary alert we saw earlier. I can put a lot of information in here, including sort of things that I can search for, searchable terms that might help me sell Mr. Jim Smith something later on or now. So for instance, if Mr. Jim Smith, all he talks about is boating, and in fact says he won't be allowing me to build him a custom home unless I can build a boat dock as well. Well, that's good information, right? If I can't find him a site, or if this site doesn't support a boat dock, I might want to let him know that. So I'm going to type things in like that to give me searchable terms. And later on, if I'm scratching my head wondering, who was it that told me they had to have that boat dock? Well, I could go up here and search, and I could type boat dock, and sure enough, Mr. Jim Smith will pop up, or I could even type boating. So I know that these are searchable terms. These are hot buttons, and I can type in a bunch of preferences here, what Mr. Jim Smith is looking for. And of course, if I know anything about the job site, if he owns the lot, or what type of inventory or plan we're trying to sell him, I can put all of that information here as well. The follow-up plans and tasks, this is really kind of the magic of Top Builder Solutions. This is the automation side of it. When we think of trying to take some of the legwork away, it's this portion of it. We want to make sure we're working our leads, but I also want to make sure that those tasks on that main screen make sense to where I'm at in that particular lead. If I'm in the prospecting status, I don't want sort of initial setup inquiry steps in there. So the way that we make sure that works, number one, we have follow-up plans in the system. You've either created them yourself, or you have taken advantage of our Quick Start plans, which is a set of pre-built plans that Top Builder Solutions can set up in your account in a matter of seconds and allow you to start using this powerful feature. So keep in mind, follow-up plans are highly, highly important, and I'm going to show you how this works, how we automate this. This is an online inquiry plan. This is my initial plan that just kind of gives me some steps. I'm going to send them an automated email. I'm also going to make sure that we've made some phone calls, and there's some tasks to update a few things. So we'll get those through. I've made that phone call, and now Mr. Smith says, you know what? Let's go ahead and do the job. Well, he's no longer an online inquiry. Now he's become a prospect. So when I switch him to prospect, keep an eye on that plan down there, because I have a prospecting plan, and it's a nice one. It's 23 steps, and those 23 steps basically tell me that if I'm working that plan properly, I'll make it through the prospecting status, and I will have either turned Mr. Smith into a customer, a paying customer, or I will have made it to steps 22 and 23, where he gets a sorry it didn't work out email automatically, and I get a task to change his status to lost. So this is a complete look at how I work the prospecting status. Not just the prospecting status, though, specifically the prospecting status tied to a customer who is ready to buy right now. If Mr. Smith calls me back and he says, you know what, it's going to be 6 months before we're ready, well, I don't want a nice aggressive plan like this, I might drive him away. But what I could do is change his priority to a B, a buy in 6 months, and once again, keep an eye on that plan. I have a 3-month follow-up email, and then a call at 6 to say, hey, Jim, we going for it? Is this time to go ahead and set up? And if he says yes, well, I'll switch him right back to an A, and I'll get my A plan back. So that is the cool part of Top Builder Solutions. And of course, I can have a lot of different plans for a lot of different things. It's not just prospecting. Maybe he's ready to buy, but maybe his credit is not. So I might move him to a credit repair status, and of course, it kicks me right out of the prospecting plan and right into a plan that helps us get his credit fixed. By the time we get to the end of this, hopefully he's ready to buy again. It does give us some time. It gives us about 4 months. So we've made sure that his credit is repaired now before we move back in and try and put him back in as a prospect, or maybe a B back, or whatever we want to call it at this point. But just know that when I change him back, I will get back my plan, and I will be able to continue working him with this nice aggressive plan now to get him sold and get my money. So this is how we make sure that we automate those steps on the first page. And of course, we don't want to let them go past due like we saw, because I'll point out I have an automated email here that'll send out immediately. I have a few tasks. Most of these are just to check and see if he's on a phone call or on a newsletter list, but here I have an email or a phone call to him. Chances are, if I don't make this phone call, when this next email goes out right on time, because this plan is dauntless and it will work whether you do or not, this will go out right on time, and this email might actually reference that last call we had. So if I didn't make that call, it might look like I'm not doing my job. So it's important when you use a task setup like this, when you use a follow-up plan, that you follow it. Because, like I said, the only tasks that are going to show up on the main screen are the ones that you have to handle. If it says automated email and it's tied to an automated email, the system will do its job regardless, and it will send it on this date at this time. So that is the important part about making sure that you work every step and always on time, or you need to come in here and manually push these back. And I'll show you how to manage a task once we get through a lead. So just keep in mind that follow-up plans, very important, highly important. And these can keep working for us long after we've closed them and made that money. I can go into basically a customer, right? I can say now that I have closed this job complete. Well, they're no longer a active lead, but I can now start sending them warranty reminders after a year. Or maybe I'm sending them VIP and referral emails, trying to get some additional business. If they had a good time and they had a good job, they probably will go ahead and refer me to someone. So that's a great way to keep that business relationship going, by keeping them on a drip campaign of some sort, even after they've become a job complete. So this is what is the cool part here about changing these statuses. Now I'm going to put him back into a active just so he'll stay on my main screen over there. We'll get that prospect plan back. The next little thing here is documents and photos. I can put in a lot of things here. If I have a picture of the Smith family, or maybe a set of job site plans, or a contract, or maybe one of my subcontractors ran over the curb, broke it, and now for insurance purposes I have to take a picture of it. I could go ahead and attach all of those things here. Anything I need to keep with the job that's important, I'm going to pop it in here, and I'm going to keep it. Now, of course, I will come back to additional contacts. You'll notice I skipped this. I'm going to tie these two together at the end here. This next one is history. Earlier, when I clicked a few tasks, it said they were done. Well, what history does is it recorded that as complete. So now, even a year later, I can come back to Mr. Jim Smith and I know when I completed these tasks. I might even have some notes in here to clue me into how I completed them and maybe what happened during those. So history is important, and know that I can always come in here. If I had an impromptu phone conversation with Mr. Smith, I could come and add that into history. Put the notes from that call so that, like I said, years later, I can come back and reference it. So history is important. It's also where email integration comes in. It's where we start saving those email conversations. When Mr. Smith reads this welcome email, it will tell me that he read it. If he replies to it, it will also tell me his reply. It'll save the full body right here in Top Builder Solutions. I have a lead I've done that with, and I will show you in just a moment. The next tab here is notes. Please keep in mind, This is never customer facing. This is internal, so you can put whatever you need here. This is just for you. These last two tabs are important. This additional contact is a way to associate contacts with a lead. And I can associate as many as I need, and there's a lot of reasons to do this. I know that a realtor or an agent brought me this piece of business. Well, it'd be advantageous to associate them with a lead so that even years down the road, I could go back and see what pieces of business they've sent me. Maybe I reward them based off of that. So it's nice to be able to tally those things. So I would associate my realtor and agent. I might have a consultant or a subcontractor working on this job. I'd associate them as well. Maybe Mr. Smith's wife told me, I'd love to have your newsletter. Well, I'd go ahead and add her too as a contact and put her as the spouse and have her as a customer contact that's getting my newsletter every week. So that's another way I can use the additional contacts field. This is just a way that I can associate as many people as I need to with this lead. Now the agent tab is a wee bit different. I have a realtor and agent that sent me this piece of business, and when they did, they told me, look, Mr. Smith is still my customer as well. It's important you keep me in the loop of any communication with him. Well, that's what this agent tab does. Not only does it associate the agent with the job, but it basically says when I send this person an automated email or an email marketing, they're going to get CC'd on it. They remain in the loop anytime I'm connecting with their customer over email. So that's important. It makes them feel like I'm always keeping them in the loop. And of course, one day they may call me and tell me that they're tired of getting warranty and VIP referral emails for this guy, and I can just as easily come and click remove agent and take them completely out of the picture. I can still remain associated though, and I'd want to keep them associated, of course, because years down the road, they might tell me they brought me Mr. Smith, and the only way I'd know is if I could go and check his contact and see who he's associated with. So I want to make sure he remains here. But the agent tab is just a way that I can make sure that they keep in the loop. Now, once I've made it through these tabs, and I've put in all this information, I have probably spent a few more extra minutes on this, but this is a strong piece of data that will work very hard for me in the future. And the more time I spend on my data, the harder it will in fact work. And that's always a great part of CRM, of course. So we want to make sure that the Enter More Info button is something that you're always using because it gives you so many more options. Now, of course, once I'm all done and I have Mr. Smith complete, and this is a great contact or a great lead I can work at this point, I'm going to save this and go ahead and go back to my dashboard. Now I'm going to draw your attention to something. It's something I just did. And it's true that we are terrible at multitasking. Our brains really aren't set up that way, even though we may think we are. And I am guilty of it. I think I'm the best multitasker out there. But what I just did was I said we should go ahead and save this. And I'm talking, but I clicked my dashboard. I totally forgot to save it. I like to do that just for this one little reason so you can see how forgiving Top Builder Solutions is. I want you to notice that Mr. Smith, 1010 Holly Hall is in fact on my screen. And if I dive into it, every piece of information I put in there is in fact still there. So Top Builder Solutions basically said, instead of me clicking this save and return, I clicked dashboard, but in the background, Top Builder Solutions said, you wanted to save that. I know that's what you meant to do. And so it did. It saved it for me. So long as I didn't shut off my screen or close the browser window or my power didn't go out, and all I did was click away, Top Builder Solutions will in fact save it for me. It's just a nice little feature and it's very forgiving, and it makes sure that there's never any moments where you lose everything that you've just done. Because like I said, we want to spend a little more time on that data. So we'll look at CRM now. We are going to pop in here and take a look at the tasks. So we've gone in, we've changed that plan within Mr. Smith's 1010 Holly Hall here. We've done some tasks. We can see them here. And of course down here in my task area. And you'll see here I can filter a lot of different ways. I can expand my view. These are ways I can customize the dashboard so that it makes sense to me. But here's all those tasks associated with Mr. Smith. You'll notice I see no automated emails. This is what I was saying earlier. Unless I make these calls and do these tasks, chances are he's going to get an automated email referencing something I should have been doing. So I want to make sure I don't get these red ones. I want to make sure these are not overdue. I want to work my leads to the fullest. When we see these tasks out here, we know that this is how we're going to work the prospecting status. There's a lot of ways to handle this though. Some of these tasks are very easy. I know he's on the newsletter. By default he is, and he hadn't opted out. So I can actually just click done on this task. There's not a lot to that. I don't need any notes or anything to remind myself that he did indeed get on my newsletter. In fact, I probably added his wife on there because she told me she wanted to be on it. But this one, the first phone call follow-up, this is a little different. This isn't just checking my memory to remember if I have him on the newsletter. This is an actual task where I'm going to call Mr. Smith and try and achieve something. It would be handy if I had the notes from that call. All right, I don't just want to click done. It tells me nothing about what I did. Really, the more practical way to work this particular task would be to click directly into it. So I'm going to click the subject of the task. You'll see it pop up on my screen. I mentioned earlier, the description field is always highly visible. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to leave myself some notes that I know will be highly visible. And what I'm going to do is put a nice little date stamp. This helps me remember when I did this. And then, of course, I'm going to put my notes. And I can be as verbose as I want. I can put the entire conversation, or I can just throw a few little notes that maybe we talked about and I want to remember later on. Even years later, I can come back to these notes. Now, of course, I've completed this. This is done. This is the same as clicking that box out there. I'm going to click complete, and I'm going to save it. That task is done, and now I've got some notes to back me up. If I need to go back, if Mr. Smith calls me back and says, you know what, we didn't talk about that in that first call, but I'm almost certain we did. Well, sure enough, I have my notes. I can always go right back into his history, and I can see I have my notes here. So I have some vindication. I have some notes basically of what we spoke about. And if I did a good job of keeping those notes, I have that particular thing in there that we were talking about. Now there's another way that I can do this as well. I have a second phone call follow-up. I'm going to be out of the office tomorrow, but I do work in tandem with someone. I have a partner that'll work this particular task for me. Now the way that I'm going to give this over to them to make sure that they see it on their screen like I see it now, once again I'm going to click into that task. Maybe I'm going to leave some notes, right? Maybe I'm going to tell my partner what I did. I left him a voicemail. So he knows, look, I tried. I just wasn't successful on this, and I'd like for you to try. So I can leave them some notes, maybe some instructions. I can say that this is an in-progress thing because I have started it. But more importantly, let's go ahead and give it to my partner. Let's save this now, and of course we'll see that this task will pop off of my screen. I no longer have a second follow-up call. My partner has it. And when he completes it and types in his notes, it's going to show up in that history. So I can easily go back now and kind of keep track of what the two of us are doing on this particular job, just by the notes and by us sharing these tasks. Now, whoever owns the lead, whoever that lead owner was, is who is going to get the main brunt of the tasks. So you might have to kind of scoot these around or move them to different people if someone does specific things within it. But we always want to make sure that we are using the notes and always making sure that we keep some sort of notes within these fields because it does come in handy. Later on, if I'm wondering what we've done here with Mr. Dave Knowles in this remodel, well, I have an entire history. And I can see that there are plenty of places where I've gone through and I've added notes. So I've got tons and tons of notes, what we've talked about. So this is good stuff. Always make sure you're keeping all of your information in there. Now I mentioned emails will also save in that history. Let me just quickly show you what that looks like. Mr. Bob White has been sent a lot of emails, and if I click on his history here, you'll see we have an entire history of automated emails that have gone out to him and regular emails as well. Now when he reads these, it will tell us that he has, and of course when he replies, it'll tell us he's done that too. And just to show you what that looks like, the very first email I ever sent Bob was right here. Here's the proposal I promised you. So I sent that out to Bob at 10:03 a.m. Well, he's quick on the gun because at 10:04 a.m. he read it, and it tells me he did. Not only did he read it, but he instantly hit reply, and he replied, "Thanks, here's the signed version. I look forward to working with you, Bob." It saved that. And at no time did Bob ever agree to a read receipt or say that he was going to save his reply in my Top Builder Solutions. He merely handled his email just like he always does and replied back to my Outlook. But because I used Top Builder Solutions as my jump-off point for communications, I'm now saving and capturing the history of that conversation inside of Top Builder. That's email integration, and that's why we set up our email signature exactly like it looks outside of Top Builder as well. We make it seamless, so they don't know if I'm using this system or if I'm using Outlook to hold that conversation. Now, the way I achieve that, and this is important because there are two ways that I can send out a basic email very quickly to a customer. Right now, I'm inside of Mr. Bob White's primary contact, as you can see. He has his work email here. Well, it's as easy as clicking this little blue envelope. You'll see a basic window pop up, and that's what this is. I can put in a subject, I can attach files. It autofills his name and puts in my email signature. More importantly, though, it automatically checks Capture Replies and History, and this is what embeds Capture History at TopBuilderSolutions.net inside of the CC field. That's what tells me when he's read it. That also what tells me when he replies and what he says within the history. So we want to make sure that this is used. That way you're always capturing this stuff and TopBuilder's working in the background for you. So that is the first way to do it. Anytime you see the little blue envelope, you click it and you'll always get the email. The second way to do this, and the easiest way, is under the CRM Manage Contacts. I love the Manage Contacts screen because it puts them all here. All of your contacts, your prospects, your agents, all your professionals, your customers, they're all here. And I can filter freely. So if I'm just looking for my customers, here they are. Now it's very easy for me to send an email from here because all I have to do is just click the email address. And once again, I get the nice box. Everything's filled in for me other than the content, and Capture Replies and History is already checked. So that gives me a direct route to that customer, and I know that everything is going to save in here. And keep in mind, I'm carrying on this conversation outside of TopBuilder, inside of my Outlook, not inside of TopBuilder. That's the magic of Capture History. It's working for me even though I'm not inside the system. Now that is CRM in a nutshell. So if you're following all of those best practices, then you are in fact working your leads. So always use your follow-up plans. That way you always know that you always have next steps, and make sure you're always working those next steps. That way you don't have past dues, and also no confusing automated emails go out that don't also have the backing of a call that's potentially listed within that email. So that is the CRM portion of it. I want to make sure that if you have questions, that you know that you can always come to us at support@topbuildersolutions.com. I'm going to put the slide up one last time. Please note the phone numbers and the email address. It's the easiest way to reach us. And of course, please remember your online help center is always available for you. And we always train 5 days a week. So go ahead and register for those. Come on in, and we look forward to seeing you there. I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.